Hey, Tar Pit crew, thanks for tuning into the Tar Pit Podcast, your go-to spot for all things Carolina football. Did you know you can also catch full episodes of the Tar Pit Podcast on Spotify? If you haven't already, make sure to check us out and follow us today on Spotify for all the latest UNC football coverage. Need fresh game day gear? Swing by the Shrunken Head Boutique or Tailgate by Shrunken Head on Franklin Street. Use code TARPITPOD for 15% off your entire order, anytime in-store or online at shrunkenhead.com. All right, let's get into it.
What's going on, Tar Pit crew? Welcome back to another episode of the Tar Pit Podcast, your go-to spot for all things Carolina football. Look, Carolina's got 3 games left, win 2, go to a bowl, so super important 3 weeks ahead. So look, if you're looking for some fresh new game day gear, if you've been listening to the Tar Pit Podcast, you definitely know the spot to go is Shrunken Head, the boutique, or Tailgate by Shrunken Head right there on Franklin Street, or you can hit up shrunkenhead.com, use the code TARPITPOD in store or online. You'll get 15% off your whole order. I was just in there this past week and picked me up some gear, 15% off a whole order. It was awesome. So look, I'm excited for this upcoming game. I think it's going to be a good one. I hope so anyway. I just want a good football game, definitely a football game. Hopefully that we come away with a win, but not other than that, something that's better than the first half of what I watched in Keenan this past weekend. We had an awesome time with former UNC quarterback Brendan Renner on the episode this past Sunday night. If you haven't seen that, it was a breakdown of our last game against Stanford, which Carolina came away with the win. So look, win 2 of the next 3, go to a bowl game. I'd like to welcome in Conor O'Neill, who is a super busy guy, if I should say. I've never heard of this before, covering 2 teams within the ACC, Wake Forest and Duke. I definitely got a lot of questions to figure out how you do all that. But Conor, welcome to the Tar Pit Podcast. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's kind of, you're in my world for 2 weeks. Got at Wake this week and then home game against Duke next week.
Yeah, I know, but I heard you say, prior to tonight's episode that you recorded 2 other podcasts, I think, right? Leading up to this one, both Duke. So we're honored that we could get you on to talk about Wake Forest, which is having a good season. I believe they're off to a 6-3 start right now. Yep. It's not really a start anymore, right? With the season coming to a close. But Troy, Trevor, I'll kick it to you guys. Let's get Conor in here and ask him some questions.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to Conor because we were just before we kicked it off and went live tonight. I was singing his praises for his swift communication with getting back in touch with us and being able to join with us tonight. Shot him a quick DM on Twitter, and we were sitting in studio, Chris, after we had did the Tar Pit post game on Sunday against Stanford, and he shot me a DM back. We were able to make it work, and I appreciate you joining in with us, Conor. I got a lot of admiration for you, man. I scouted your profile out pretty extensively, man, and I got a lot of admiration for the work you do and the coverage and the dedication to both programs. You got a lot of bulletin board material to talk about. Do you do basketball too for both, or is it just football?
Oh yeah, basketball.
Any other sports?
I cover baseball. It's hard to do baseball until basketball ends.
Yeah.
But especially with where Wake has been for the last 4 years, baseball wise, and then
Duke too.
Duke's been a win away from their first trip to Omaha in X number of years.
Yeah.
Geez, Conor, when do you sleep?
Summer when I'm not playing golf. Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about that. How's your golf game?
It could be better, but I bogey golf. I think my index is like a 12.2. I'm not going to tell you that I suck and duff it around and hit it in the trees.
He'd beat us, Troy.
Yeah, I was about to say Conor's probably got a golf Instagram page where he's just striping 5 irons from about 225 I
do like 5 iron
from the tee boxes. So, man, I appreciate you jumping on with us, Conor. Go ahead, Trev.
One thing I want to add before we deep dive into the questions. So, Chris, you mentioned that you want to see an exciting first half. I was looking at the totals that Vegas puts out, and this game is at 38.5. Every other ACC game this week is in the 50s. So I don't think it'll be too exciting in the first half. If it is, it'll be a big surprise.
Hey, I am anxious to see how this game flows. I think this is going to be a really interesting game for both teams. Obviously, Wake comes off a really great win inside in Virginia on the road, hostile environment. That fan base over in Charlottesville certainly had a lot to cheer for and be proud of, and it's evident on game days just how they pack that place and have really rallied behind the program. But Wake went on the road, got it done. Carolina had a close contest with Virginia inside Kenan Stadium a couple weeks ago. Guys, we were on hand for that one. And I think Wake and Carolina really stack up pretty well against each other. I know both offenses have some question marks. Both defenses, I think Wake has played pretty consistent on the defensive side of the football for a good majority of the season, whereas Carolina kind of trailed a little bit coming into this season. And then in the last 4 or 5 games, they've completely flipped the script defensively and have really became a great defensive unit, and one that Jake Dickert. I always want to say Dave Clawson because I actually want to pick your brain on that a little bit before we jump into Wake's offense and what they bring to the table. But I'm kind of leading into where I'm going with this by saying I think these two teams really stack up well against each other. Offensively, they're kind of identical. Defensively, they both play sound defense. I think Wake's done it a little bit longer. So I think, look, Wake went on the road in Virginia and won a really good game in a hostile environment, but it was an ugly game. I mean, that's a game where you relied on a punt return from what's the guy's name? Rodriguez.
Carlos Hernandez.
Yeah, Hernandez. I'm sorry. That was not – don't clip me, Wake fans, please, for that. I botched his last name. But it was a defensive battle. It was a grudge match. And I think that this game Saturday in Winston-Salem could be very much the same. Which team is more sound and not going to shoot themselves in the foot more? And which offense can play better complementary football. Because I think both defenses and both special teams units can place their offenses in pretty good field position for the most part. So I think it's going to be an interesting test for both teams. They kind of mirror each other a little bit, in my opinion. But guys, y'all want to jump in here? I got a Jake Dickert question for Conor.
You got it.
All right, so let me ask you this. I told you that I'm so used to seeing Dave Clawson coaching Winston-Salem and what he's done for that program, put Wake Forest on the map. That program was a sleeping giant for a long time, and Dave kind of really poked the beast that's within the program and got him up to top 10 nationally before they came into Carolina. And Ty Chandler ran all over them for about 3 touchdowns. In Chapel Hill, but it was kind of a shock to me when Dave Clawson decided to step away from Wake Forest and hang it up. It's a little bit weird for me to see him on the ACC network every now and then commentating games and him not being on the sidelines in a Wake Forest hat. But Jake Dickert comes along. It was a hire from Washington State. Every time Washington State gets brought up in college football, it seems like they produce gems. I mean, you've got Cam Ward that came out of Washington State, Mateer at Oklahoma, and then you got Jake Dickert, who's got Wake Forest sitting at 6-3 right now, and in control of their own destiny pretty much in a pretty competitive ACC. But what has Jake brought to Wake Forest? What is his vision for the program? He just got hired in December, in December of last year. So what has he brought to Winston-Salem, and where's this program headed under his leadership, you think?
So the biggest thing that I've said is you start by saying Dave Clawson accomplished some things at Wake Forest that people thought would not be accomplished at Wake Forest in the current climate of college football. Got into an ACC championship. They won. That is slipping my mind. I think they won 10 or 11 games that year.
Yeah, really good football team.
Yeah, great season in 21, even with the Carolina loss. Of course, it helped that was a non-con game. And it's funny to me that Virginia could get to Charlotte this year having a non-con loss at NC State now. But this program was 4-8 the last 2 years. I mean, it's not like things were going well, and they needed a different energy. They needed to kind of modernize some things. They just needed a vibe change. And look, for about 2 months last year, I figured we could get to this point of Dave is run out of his tolerance of where college football is. He's not against players being paid. He's more, you have to understand, Dave Clawson is first and foremost a teacher. Like, I think if he wasn't a football coach, he would have been a professor or a high school teacher and coached high school football somewhere. The last thing that he wanted to be doing in like the last weekend of October is meeting with players to gauge who might want an NIL bump, who might be looking to transfer, who's unhappy with their playing time. Like, he wanted to continue coaching and teaching players and getting them through tough things and bouncing back. So he was exhausted by the state of college football. The spring portal on that was another constant point of consternation. So up until the last 2 weeks of last season, I figured, all right, Dave's going to be kind of done. And then he talked about rev share, and it was like he was energized and excited, and he was talking about what their future would hold and what they would do to evaluate where things had gone wrong the past few years. And then they get into the off season. They're kind of making some moves. They were bringing in a quarterback from Northern Illinois. I think they were bringing in a defensive tackle who wound up going to Carolina. They have an ECU defensive tackle transfer.
Yeah, Sims.
Yeah. So he was going to go to Wake and play for Dave. And I think that was just kind of Dave trying to talk himself into giving them another season. And it got to the point in about 2 weeks after the season ended where it wasn't tenable. He didn't see himself continuing. So they changed him out. The line that I'll always remember from, we did a Dave Clawson like resignation press conference the morning after the announcement was made. And he said something about, this search is further along than you probably realize. It's like, oh, okay. And then I think it was later that night we were covering a basketball game, and all of a sudden I'm seeing stuff on message boards about the flight tracker already having a scheduled flight from Pullman to Winston-Salem the next night. So, yeah,
I guess it's crazy really how fast things can happen, right?
It really was further along than any of us realized. Jake has brought a new energy to the program. He has kind of revitalized things. He's made some things fun again. It's easy to say that there's a culture change. I mean, I think that, this is actually something that Manny Diaz says in the other half of my brain here. The most overused word in college sports is culture. I mean, you're naturally going to have an identity shift with a new coach. It's a trickle down effect from the top down. But Wake needed that. Like, Wake needed a change. Wake needed to get out of the 4-8 doldrums. They were, each of the last 2 years, they were 0 for November. So winning last weekend is actually the first November win they've had since 2022, which is wild when you think about it in that perspective.
Yeah.
The style that Jake wants is completely different. With Dave, it was a lot of how can they get the Wake Forest athlete who is going to be on the smarter side and might be a multi-sport guy. I think specifically in terms of the offensive line, like they would always get these offensive linemen that came in as freshmen at like 250 pounds, and you wouldn't see or hear from them for 2 years because they'd just be in the weight room and be eating 5 meals a day, and they'd have to bulk up and get to the point where they could actually play ACC football. Not that I think Jake Dicker will be bringing in 5-star offensive linemen in the next couple of years, but they want to be more of a physical football team. Like, they want to be built in the, line up and punch you in the mouth type of mold. Yeah. Jake actually told us after the Virginia game that, like, he's been wanting to play this style of football for a long time, which is interesting because at Washington State, they were more air raid. Like, Cam Ward and John Mateer threw the ball all over the yard.
Yeah.
So Jake wants a hard-nosed football team. He wants to be more physical. He wants to be physically imposing, which if you followed ACC football and Wake football for a while, that's going to introduce some natural skepticism, because when have you ever thought of Wake Forest as a physical football team? So it is still early in the tenure. The early results, I mean, 6-3 on a team that was picked to finish 16th in the ACC is pretty good. I do think I would caution, because they have a lot of transfers that are not going to be on the team next year. They're going to have a little bit of a recalibration to where, I think first-year coaches, we're expecting more of them, but I also think that they wind up with these older rosters just because they have to fill out their roster through the transfer portal. And then it's really the year 2 guys that suffer, because now all of a sudden they've got to play a bunch of freshmen and second-year guys that weren't on the field because they had a 5th or 6th year guy who's 23 years old playing in front of them the previous year. So we'll see where it goes. And the direction is certainly pointed upward.
I'll go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, before we jump into offense, and Trev, I'll pass it to you to get us going. Coming from Washington State, he got a chance to learn a lot about Mike Leach, and I think he said it today in his press conference that he really put an emphasis on your edge and energy being an advantage going up against teams, and he put an emphasis on that being the focal point on how they train their players and what they demand out of them. And he truly believes going into this game. Like, I watched that press conference from today. It was less than 10 minutes. So I watched it like 2 or 3 times before we jumped on live. And you can tell that he believes that Carolina cannot match Wake Forest's energy coming into this game on Saturday. Like, it pumped me up. Like, to be honest with you, there's a mentality there in Winston-Salem, man, that you're right. You asked the question and posed the question, when's the last time we've heard of a Wake Forest team being physical? Carolina, the same thing. We've voted the nickname Charmin Soft for a while, but you can definitely tell that I had to get the Jake Dickert history there for a little bit. Trev, kick us off with offense, bro. I know I kind of went long-winded there, but y'all jump in here. Let's get it going.
Yeah, and coming from Washington State, I'm sure the Belichicks and at least Steve last year is a little familiar with them, so it'll be a fun matchup. But to piggy back off of the offense there, they come into the game averaging 356 yards per game, 23 points per game. And I mentioned it earlier, the total was at 38, so they're not expecting a shootout when we roll into Winston-Salem. What has been I was looking at the stats, and obviously seems like Robbie has kind of taken the QB1 role, but Purdy has played some as well. What's kind of been the I guess you could say the weakness on the Wake offense, and what's held them back to this point from your eyes, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, it's quarterback play. They're not getting consistent quarterback play out of either one. Robbie Ashford's been banged up, and to an extent, that's going to happen when you have a running quarterback, and he is a dynamic runner when he's right. And when he was right early in the season, it was a functional and kind of dangerous offense when you get the ball out on the perimeter. Chris Barnes, who's going right now, but he got banged up both against Georgia Tech. Virginia Tech, he had a thumb injury, and that's why he missed the game at Oregon State, where Deshaun Purdy came in and threw 4 touchdowns. But I'm pretty confident in saying Oregon State's the worst team Wake played this year, and they fired their coach the next day. I think Western Carolina leads the SoCon at this point, so feel confident in saying Wake's FCS opponent is better than Oregon State was. It's also at Virginia, they were playing quarterback roulette. It was basically Robbie for 2 drives, Deshaun for 1, and that was kind of the rotation. The biggest positive there, you can say, is when Wake needed a drive in the 4th quarter, they put together a 9-minute drive. Before that drive, they were 1 for 11 on 3rd downs, and then they converted 4 of them.
Who led that 9-minute drive? Which quarterback was that?
That was Robbie.
Robbie.
And I think at least 2 of the 3rd down conversions he picked up with his legs. So he's got a toughness to him. That's one of the things that I want to make clear is, like, he does have a toughness to his game and to his character. He is experienced. There's just some inaccuracy and some tendency to call his own number on reads a little too often for what I think a quarterback should be. But you see him running over a guy at, is that Kennesaw State maybe? I'm trying to recognize which game these are coming from.
Was he a transfer from Auburn, or I believe
along the
SEC?
way?
So
he's
SC last year.
He's a sixth-year guy. He spent 2 years at Oregon and actually played in more baseball games than he did football games out there. And then he went to Auburn for 2 years, and Auburn is where he started. He started in Brian Harson's last season in 22, and then it would have been Hugh Freeze.
Yep.
Came in 23 and it didn't mesh. Then he was at South Carolina last year, backing up Lenora Sellers. He, I think, started a game and led another game-winning drive somewhere in relief of Lenoris. But then, last year of eligibility, he didn't want to. I understand, like, you don't want to sign up to be a backup in your last season if you can go start somewhere. So he got the opportunity to start, and he has played well in spots. I don't want to say, even Jake after the Virginia game said, Robbie, it's not the sexiness that wins awards. He's not on the Maxwell list that got released today, but he is the quarterback of a 6-3 football team.
It should be 7-2.
Right.
We're talking, so
right.
And I did not see Wake being even a 6-3 football team. So they've done a great job.
Yeah, Connor, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, 5 of the last 6 matchups between Wake Forest and Carolina has been decided between, I believe, one possession. And looking at the stats, the important categories are not, I guess I would say important to fans, right? When you're just looking at stats overall, right? Total offense, scoring offense, total defense, and scoring defense. Across the board, it's pretty even. Definitely like looking at scoring defense, both of them are the same at 20.3 points per game. From your side covering the team, what would you say Wake Forest versus Carolina? Where does Wake Forest have the edge over Carolina? For me, looking at it, I would say, defense is pretty much along the same lines, right? Is to me, coming into tonight's episode, I didn't realize how good Wake Forest defense has been all year, right? And I mean, I've heard about it, right, but I haven't, rightfully so, paid much attention to it, right? And so for to me, I would say potentially, it seems like everybody we faced, right, has had that's a P4 opponent, has had a slightly better, or a lot of teams have had a lot better offense than Carolina does, but it looks like Wake Forest has a slightly better offense. Would you say that's true covering this team, that you think that's maybe potentially where Wake Forest has the edge in this matchup?
I guess. I mean, you got to understand, Chris, I just watched them win a game on the road against a top 25 team, and they had 203 yards of offense. They make things work because of the defense. Like they're able to beat Virginia because on the first punt of the game, Wake's punting to Virginia. Virginia blocks it and starts at Wake's 24-yard line, and Wake only gives up a field goal. Like that's such a disadvantaged situation. You actually kind of win the momentum, even though you're giving up 3 points, because they start so close to your end zone. That's before Chandler Morris gets knocked out of the game, and you only give up 3 points. That's Wake's defense is the reason that they're 6-3. It has something to do with Robbie and his tough play. It has something to do with DeMond Claiborne being one of the best running backs in the ACC. It has a lot to do with a defense that I thought could be good coming into the season. I've kind of made this joke about myself being Charlie Brown and Wake's defense being Lucy holding the football. I have fallen for it over and over and over again, and gone through all these fall camps and said their defense is going to be legit this year. And then we get into the season, it's like, yeah, they can't stop anybody. They have to score 50 to win this game. I did not see them being this good defensively. I mean, they fly around. They have an 8-man defensive line rotation that is fantastic, and for my money is maybe the best 1 through 8 defensive line in the ACC. It's just they have to piece together enough big plays offensively. And that's where it's mind-blowing that they've won 2 of the last 3 games. They've scored 13 against SMU, 7 in a 42-7 loss to Florida State, and then they scored 16 points with 1 punt return touchdown against Virginia and won. So
yeah, this is Claiborne. We're showing on the screen here. I believe it is. And he was on the team last year, correct? When I was reading about it.
He's a 4-year guy.
Okay,
Yep.
So would you say that Wake Forest has mostly been built through the transfer portal, right? As a first year coach, definitely like Belichick and Carolina here. Is Claiborne that leadership guy that you would probably bet on? Is that voice in the locker room?
They need him to get going. They've needed him to be a leader all year, and he's been a captain. He makes everything go. I think 95% of the teams in the country would say that their quarterback is the most important player to their offense. I would say Demon Claiborne is the most important player to Wake's offense. He makes everything go.
Yeah, I saw that captain patch when I was kind of doing a little bit of prep for tonight's episode. Troy, I'll kick it to you for a little bit further discussion on the offense before we transition to the defense.
Yeah, Connor, man, going into this episode, man, I went back and watched Jake Diggert's press conference from today, and one of the things that he put an emphasis on is red zone deficiencies. I don't know whether that would be specifically offense or defense.
Oh, it's offense. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, I was. That's where I was leaning more on, which is why I want to bring it up during the offensive segment of this scouting report. He did give credit to Carolina, being a pretty stout red zone defensive unit. I think when I say that these two teams match up well together, I do think what I mean by when I say that is obviously both defensive units are the reason why both teams are where they're at this point in the season. It seems like the offense is 2 steps behind the defensive unit as a whole. They do some good things. They're consistent enough, and Belichick said this about Carolina himself. I think it was either today or yesterday, that they're consistent in doing the right things, but there's too much inconsistency on the offensive side of the football, which is why we're seeing some of the struggles that we're seeing on the offensive side of the football. And I think a lot could be said. A lot of that could be said is true about Wake Forest in a sense. I want to talk about the red zone deficiencies because Carolina's got the same thing. I know you're down there against Virginia with the ball on the 3-yard line. And then I didn't watch that game. I know you guys came away with the win, but then I'm sitting there watching a condensed version of the game. And then Virginia's got the ball about to punch it in again. What happened with that? So, like, Carolina was the same way against Stanford. You get the ball on the 6-yard line and you have to settle for 3 points. In that situation, I don't think Wake Forest walked away with anything.
Yeah,
they fumble or something.
Wake's one red zone drive, one time into Virginia's red zone. They got it to the 1-yard line on a 4th down. I think they tried 2 or 3 runs before that. They went quick to the line, like they huddled and then sprinted right to the line, which I think is a good idea. You're not giving the defense a picture of what you're doing. You're not allowing for any last-second signals to come in. But then it was like they were too sped up, and Robbie Ashford zinged the toss to Demond, and it wasn't right here for him to catch. Like, it was a little over here. It looked like it was a little too hot, and Demond couldn't handle it. It's one of those where I think it's 50% one guy's fault, 1/2 the other guy's fault. But yeah, he just had to fall on it, and his Virginia ball at the 5-yard line at going out.
Yeah, that's one of the things, like, I talk about the similarities for Wake's offense and Carolina's offense. Geo, same thing. You know what I mean? They get down in the 6-yard line, and I'm sitting there screaming to Trevor. I see Jake Johnson line up in the slot, and I'm like, Jake Johnson, sit down route 5 yards into the goal line, and Geo literally ran the route that I said he was going to run, and Geo overshoots him. There's a lot of similarities with Carolina's offense and Wake Forest's offense. with the execution throughout the course of the game. I think they're more inconsistent than they are consistent in a lot of areas. I will say this. I do think that this game comes down to which defense will shoot themselves in the foot more first, or breaks first, I should say. But I think if, this game, both offenses, I'd be interested to see what they pull out. I know Wake kind of went into the trick bag last week at Virginia a little bit. I
think that was their third longest play of the night, and it was for 15 yards.
Yeah. I think that was pretty. I thought that was pretty interesting. But Belichick raved about that guy right there, Claiborne. What he's able to do. I've watched tape on him, man. He's an explosive guy. You're right. He is and I'd say that you're right, but you know that you're right. He is a 4-year guy. He's a guy that you've seen progress since he got to Winston-Salem. And he's a playmaker. He's definitely a guy that Belichick raved about going into this game. Against Wake Forest. Talk a little bit about him, I guess. I got the kind of the red zone deficiency aspect about it, but this is a guy that Carolina on our defense, we've been doing a good job throughout the course of the season of shutting or stopping the run and limiting teams from establishing a run game. I know Jake Dickert, he said that you guys have to be better on early downs and run the ball more explosively. This guy's fully capable of that. Talk to us a little bit about what your guy can do in the backfield for you and what he possesses for that offense.
Yeah, he's a threat to score every time he touches the ball. He's honestly the explosive plays that Wake's offense has created. If he's not running the ball, somebody else has space or is open because of a play action to him, or because the defense is zeroed in on what he could do. He has been their best offensive player for 2 years now. He's an explosive athlete. He's always on those, I can't even remember who puts them out, like Sports Source or Sports Analytics or something like that.
He's out fast, really fast.
Whoever they always highlight the 5 fastest players in the country from a weekend or something like that. I think he's been on there 5 or 6 times in the last 2 years. Like, he had a kick return touchdown at Miami last year. I think one of them was for a big run against Western Carolina this year. He's also, I think he's top 10 in some ACC rushing categories. He's missed basically a game and a half. He played 4 snaps in the season opener against Kennesaw State. So when everybody was freaked out about Wake only winning their opener 10-9 against Kennesaw State, by the way, a Kennesaw State team that's already bowl eligible and I think has 7 wins at this point. A lot of people casually forgot, like, the guy that they built their entire offense around played 4 snaps. He missed the second half of their win at Virginia Tech because he had a knee injury. He's dealt with rib injuries, but he's also a guy that last year against Louisiana, he dislocated his kneecap and came back in the game later and had a 64-yard touchdown run. So there's not many players that I've covered that can have a dislocated kneecap and run for a touchdown in the same game and in that order.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I was looking at his numbers. He's averaging close to 5 yards a carry. I know the explosive playmaker that he is, but I wanted to kind of turn it to more so your offensive line. Carolina comes into this game with 18 sacks over its last 3 games. And most importantly, there's 2 guys in Milcart and Tyler Thompson, edge rushers, that are just eating the past few weeks and going off. So I hope that continues as a Carolina fan and someone who, talks about Carolina every week. But the offensive line, how does that stack for Wake? And is it them very good at run blocking? Is it just Claiborne making plays? And also, if you could talk about a little bit about pass blocking as well.
I think there's some feeling that they've left a little meat on the bone in the run game when they've had holes open and Demond hasn't gotten on the right track. They're very happy with their pass blocking. They give whoever's playing quarterback enough time to throw typically. They brought in both tackles are new. Falili Fa'amoe came from Washington State. Melvin Siani came from Temple. They brought a center from Washington State, Devin Kalani. The guards they have are holdovers. One of them is a converted tackle, George Stye. The other one is a sixth-year guy, George Sell. So it's funny. We got Devin, the center, telling us a joke a couple weeks ago about whatever way he's pulling, he's going to say, "Hey, George, I'm going this way," or "Hey, George, I'm going that way," because he's flanked by Georges. But
It's funny.
They've been good on the offensive line. They're a little thin. They lost two guys in fall camp that, for one reason or another, left the team. They lost one of their starting guards in the season opener. They lost a tackle who would kind of be a depth piece. So they're, I think, one offensive line injury away from being in a pretty tight spot, but they've made it work. I think I did the numbers today. 5 out of the 9 games, they've only played 5 offensive linemen. So they've
pretty consistent.
There's a little bit of held together with duct tape feeling to their offensive line, but they've made it work for better or worse.
Yeah, Connor, I want to pick your brain on your skill position, specifically at wide receiver, man. Obviously with Claiborne and, Robbie, his ability to beat you with his legs. I definitely think that's something that Carolina's going to have to key on. We thought Chandler Morris was a guy coming into Keenan Stadium who would beat us with his legs, and we did a pretty good job with our defensive front and containing him and getting him on the ground. I think we had 6 sacks that game or something like that. But Robbie's a guy that can beat you with his legs, but he's also got some guys around him on the outside that can make plays. Chris Barnes, 34 catches, 504 yards on the season with 3 TDs. Burkhalter, 20 catches. Micah Mays, 17. And then obviously Carlos Hernandez, who really makes his impact felt on the special team side in the return game, but he's another weapon on the offense. Talk a little bit about the skill positions. Who's some impact guys that Carolina fans should watch out for on Saturday?
Barnes is the one you'll want to watch first. He's small. He's number 10. He's 5'7", about 160 pounds. But they run him on jet sweeps. Like, he has probably, I would guess, around 12 or 15 carries this year, just because they want to get him on the outside and get him on the orbits without having to throw the ball 20 yards to get the ball in his hands. He has not been loose lately, and that's kind of the problem that their offense has had these last 3 games. Their point totals are so low and their yardage are so low because every offensive play, it feels like they have to run the ball. They get no consistency out of their pass game. And as good as Chris Barnes has been, it's really hard when your best receiver is 5'7" and you're trying to take deep shots to a guy who's going to be outsized by every defensive back you're going to see in the ACC. I think Micah Mace has been their second best receiver, and he's a good blossoming redshirt sophomore. He missed the Virginia game with an injury, so his status is a little bit up in the air right now. We'll have to see the injury report on Thursday night. Sterling Burkhalter has been okay. They've gotten really good tight end play out of any Filet. He's hilarious to me. He played 3 years at UMass and played at Utah Tech last year. So I think between his first 4 years of college, he experienced 5 or 6 wins. So it's funny to me that he's got 6 in his 1 year of playing power conference football. But their skill outside of Damon Claiborne, it's another one where they're just trying to kind of piece together what they can.
Yeah. Hey, I got an interesting tidbit I want to throw out there to you guys. So Robbie Zell's y'all's first year OC. He was the former OC and quarterbacks coach at South Alabama. So Gio's got some history with him there. I thought that was pretty interesting. I was sitting here listening and just thought to we were getting ready to transition to defense and just thought to see who the OC was. I thought that was pretty cool to mention. Trev, you got anything you want to throw out here on offense before we transition over to defense?
No, I think I'm good on the offensive side of the ball. That's a good note. I didn't know that. I'm glad you brought that up about that coordinator. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Connor, man, I wanna pick your brain on the defensive side of the football. Obviously, we had mentioned earlier on that and I'd said it that both defenses for both teams are the reason why both programs are where they're at this point in the season. Obviously with Wake at 6-3, just coming off of a great win against Virginia on the road, and Carolina stacking 2 wins against lesser opponents, I guess, but P4 opponents nonetheless. And it's hard to get it's hard to get conference wins. It's hard to get ACC wins and win football games nowadays. And I don't care who you beat, it's a win nonetheless. But defense has solely been the anchor for Wake Forest. Talk a little bit about the mindset. I don't know if you guys have a first year DC. Along with the first year OC, talk a little bit about that. But your defense, I've watched Wake Forest play quite a bit of football this season, and it's definitely a unit. Dickert says their energy and their toughness. You can definitely feel it and see it in the way that they play on the defensive side of the football. Talk a little bit about the identity of the Wake Forest defense and what they're bringing to the table against Carolina's offense, who seems to be reeling right now, trying to figure it out.
They fly around. Scotty Hazelton is their defensive coordinator. Last year he was at Texas as an analyst. Before that he was at Michigan State, and I think Jake will tell you, and I think Scotty would tell you, it did not go well at Michigan State. Whether it just wasn't a fit or whether they didn't have the horses or what, just was not a good situation. So he and Jake go back a while. He's kind of the coach that a young coach hires an older coach that has kind of been a mentor to him to come in. And I think of Scotty in that way. Dave Clawson, when he came to Wake Forest, brought in Dave Cohen, who he had coached with at many stops like 20 years prior. So Scotty Hazelton plays an aggressive style. They make you work for everything. It helps that Wake, this is a roster that you can say was built through the transfer portal, but they also had a core group of guys on the defense that had been at Wake for 4 or 5 years. And instead of transferring out, decided that they wanted to be a part of turning the program around. And that goes to like 2 linebackers, Dylan Hazen and Quincy Bryant. Nick Anderson is a 6-year guy who is playing the best football of his career, even though he had that 3 interception game all the way back in 2020 that put him on NBC News and got him all that acclaim. And he was a freshman walk-on that got carried off the field with guys chanting scholarship for him. And he's playing phenomenal football right now. They have the funny thing too is last year cornerback was a disaster for this team. And every time we brought up corner with Dave Clawson, he would tell us that their best corner got poached in the spring portal to go be a backup at Alabama because it was more financially beneficial for him. And like, that's the state of college football. And this team has 2 corners, one of whom came in the spring portal, Ladarius Webb Jr. Karan Prunny is the other one, and he was at North Carolina A&T the last few years. At this point, I'm thinking both of them might have to be on my All-ACC team. They're playing phenomenal. Karan Prunny, I think, is allowing less than 50% completion rates on PFF. Ladarius Webb just had the PBU in the end zone on Virginia's last play. They're getting great play out of their cornerback position. And then, like I mentioned,
Patterson too.
Devon Patterson and nickel is, I think, a future NFL player.
Yeah, I like what I've seen from him. He made some plays against Virginia, came down and filled some holes and made some pretty good tackles in the backfield on some key third and short situations. Yeah,
he's a load. When you think of what college defenses want in a nickel right now, he's kind of the prototypical fit, like 6 foot, 215, can hit, but can also cover, like has some safety cover skills to where you don't feel like you're giving up everything if he's matched up on a tight end or a slot receiver. And then, like I mentioned about the defensive line, They rotate because they feel good about 1 through 4 at end, and they feel good about 1 through 4 at tackle. And it really allows them to keep everybody fresh. And that's when, it's the fourth quarter. You don't worry about those guys wearing down because they've only played 20 to 25 snaps and they're good to go.
What would you say the biggest strength is, the secondary or the front seven, if you had to pick one or the other?
I think it's defensive tackle. I'll even go more specific on you. I think they brought in Jaden Loving, came from like one of the directional Kentuckys. Dallas Afalava came from Idaho. They had Mateen Ibiruga and Zach Lovichin were both in the program. Mateen didn't play very much last year. He's a transfer from Georgetown. I mean,
somebody in that scouting department has done a really good job finding guys, whoever that is.
I said something in the Virginia game where it was just like, whatever Jaden Loving and Dallas Afalava make in NIL and rev share has been worth the rate of investment for Wake, because those two guys are just game wreckers. Afalava had the fumble force. It was actually the first fumble that Virginia has lost this season. And they lost 3 of them against Wake, but one of them, I think it was the backup quarterback, Daniel Kalen, was scrambling and Afalava just knocked the ball away from him. So,
hey, you mentioned the defensive line. One guy that I want to bring up is that's got a lot of buzz is Newer. I can't pronounce his last name. Starts with a G. 4 sacks on the season. He's a guy, man, that seems to be producing for you guys across that defensive front. Talk a little bit about him too. I don't think you mentioned him.
You would think a defensive end at like 230 pounds would not be able to play defensive end at a high level in the ACC. You'd think that he'd get crashed down on the running game every chance the team gets, but that just doesn't seem to happen. He holds up. He is a great speed rusher off the end, but we've even seen him drop into coverage. He had an interception against Malik Murphy, and it's not like it was a batted ball up in the air for forever and he just happened to go up and get it. It's like a 15-yard down the field throw where he was tracking a tight end across the middle. And Malik Murphy, I watched Malik Murphy play enough football that I can say this. He's not the most accurate quarterback in the world. And he threw it a little behind his tight end, and there was Newer with a pick. And it's like, wait, number 7? What the hell is he doing downfield covering a tight end? But he's played great. I've kind of been shocked. I talk about they brought some guys back on the defense. They really had to get a new defensive line because all their defensive linemen last year were seniors. Like, that wasn't a position where they had a mass exodus of guys leave through the portal. It was a mass exodus of guys because they were just out of eligibility. They were old up front. And so they brought in Gabe Kershke, came from Colorado State, the same place they got Newer from. And then Langston Hardy came down from UConn. And that's the other part of this that makes it so interesting and impressive of what Wake has done. They've got all these transfers on the defensive line. None of them came from somewhere like Ohio State or Florida or even like a Minnesota even. Like, they're all from the lower level football, and they're playing at a really high level.
I have to say this before it escapes my mind. And guys, Chris, Trev, y'all know how things leave my mind just like that at the drop of a hat. It's funny to me that you say made the comment about Malik Murphy, considering what he did in Winston-Salem a few years ago. There were about 18 seconds left, I think it was.
Oh, it was the last play, and he made that was the quintessential Malik Murphy play. He made the wrong play, and it just happened to go right.
It just happened to work out for him
to be the game-winning touchdown throw.
Hey, so let me ask you this with you covering Duke. I know we're talking Wake Forest here tonight, and guys, we appreciate everybody that's tuned in with us. So whether you're catching us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you're catching us from, we appreciate you tuning in here. Join with Conor O'Neill talking Wake Forest in the Tar Pit Scout Report. So thank you for spending your Wednesday night with us. Just like that, I forgot where I was going. You and y'all getting here with me.
Yeah, Connor, I wanted to ask you a question a little bit off topic while Troy tries to remember what he had there. Trevor mentioned, someone had to do a good job in the scouting report there. That's something that it seems like, Michael Lombardi has tried to like brag about in the, the media, right? Pro scouting department, all that, which, we can have a discussion about him at a later time, it feels like. But how much, do you know about how much, Wake has spent, on their roster this year? Just thinking about comparing it to what, Carolina has spent.
I'd feel comfortable
Estimated.
I'd feel comfortable saying they didn't spend as much as Carolina just because of the pomp and the attention that's been paid to bringing in Michael Lombardi, bringing in not only Bill Belichick for $10 million, but giving him a staff salary for $10 million. It's not nothing though. Like, don't let Wake cry poor. Like, they're spending the full rev share, the 20.5. Not all of that went to basketball. I very much authoritatively tell you that one. They've got to take care of some other sports like baseball. They're trying to get to Omaha every year. But they spent, I don't know the exact number. I would ballpark it somewhere in the 8 to 12 million range. Maybe a little more. I'm pretty sure they got more than 50% of the 20.5. So edge further into 12, but
that still blows my mind to think about Wake Forest spending that much money on a football. Like, it's crazy.
Everybody can do it, right?
Yeah. One other question, as we're looking at, Wake Forest's defense, when it comes to Carolina's offense, right, it's very inconsistent. However, we do have some playmakers on that side of the ball, from my opinion, and not just my opinion, across the, I guess, national and local media. Our unfortunate holdback this year has been, offensive play calling to the strengths of Gio. I don't know if I'm ready to. Never mind. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole with Gio, but against Freddie Kitchens, we'll just say that in the play calling and calling for Gio's strengths. But looking at Jordan Shipp, right? June's done such a good job in the backfield as a true freshman. Is there a player? Is there a player on Carolina's offense that is there a particular matchup that kind of concerns you across the board for Wake Forest versus Carolina?
Demon June, just because I feel confident in Wake's ability to take away good receivers. Like Trell Harris is a good receiver, and he was basically invisible for Virginia.
Who would you say that cornerback is, or is it a team effort?
Yeah, they don't have corners follow guy. They line them up like Karan. I'm not entirely sure which one's the boundary and which one's the field, but they're confident in both Prunty and Webb covering anybody in this league, and through 9 games, I don't know that there's much evidence of it not being the case. I mean, Deuce Robinson got him, Florida State, like he made plays. I don't think Carolina or anybody else in the ACC has a receiver that looks like Deuce Robinson. Like, that guy's an alien. He's 6'6", 230 pounds. He's a monster.
Sounds like you're describing me.
Wesco at Clemson, I think would be in the conversation, but Deuce is solid in his own respect. Yeah.
So the running back, I'm trying to think. Like, Jamari Taylor got some yards against Wake. That might be more because of the way Virginia needed to use him, especially with Chandler Morris going out of that game.
Yeah, Carolina. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I was just thinking it's interesting matchup for sure, because Carolina fans, it just feels like we don't know what to expect, right? We felt very confident coming into the game versus Stanford with our running game. It completely disappears, right, for the whole game, But also versus Stanford, that's a game looking at the stats there for Stanford's secondary. Right, really bad, poor passing defense, and we felt like it'd been a good opportunity to. We're still trying to say get Gio in a rhythm, right? But it didn't tend to happen, right? And something that we talked about is getting the playmakers the ball and getting them specific numbers of plays throughout drives, and it's just not happening. So, yeah. Man, that's really concerning that, you kind of talk about, wide receivers being blanked with the concerns we already have at cornerback.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wish I could tell you that you're gonna have success against. I think their Wake's corners are playing at an elite level right now.
Well, even if you did tell me we would have success, I'm not sure if I would believe you.
I tell you one thing I think Carolina can key on, and we saw it a little bit against Stanford. Offensively for us, we've kind of taken the approach of it's, who's going to be the guy that, who's going to be the guy this week. Last week, I felt like it was Davian Goss. He caught a touchdown. He's been making the most of his opportunities pretty consistently. So I'm anxious to see, you feel confident in the secondary, and our secondary too has been playing pretty stout. But I think if we can't get the run game going traditionally, I think you'll see Carolina revert back to what kind of worked against Stanford and getting the running backs involved in the passing game and using that as a form of running the football. But I also, man, want to touch base with you on this too, and let the fans know. I do think that this game could be very much like it was in Charlottesville for both teams. I think it could be a game where it comes down to field position and being able to capitalize, and which team does so, and which defense breaks first. I think that's kind of the storyline I'm rolling with going into this game. But you look at Wake's special teams last week on the road against Virginia. They came away like they relied on the special team. I think your kicker kicked a 50-yard field goal and then another 49-yard field goal. They relied on his leg, and then obviously the special teams play from your guy Hernandez. That's his last name. But I'm just saying, man, special teams, has been a big emphasis for Carolina this year. Our punter has been pretty solid all season and being able to pin teams deep, and then the defense really stepping up and being able to hold teams to relatively poor field position throughout drives and putting our offense in a good field position, but we just haven't been able to do much with it on the offensive side of the football. So I think special teams, man, going into this game, I couldn't have a podcast, a scouting report, and not emphasize special teams. It's kind of weird that we're talking about that in the scouting report, I guess you could say. But I do think for both teams' offensive struggles that it could be, and I'm leaning more towards it being a defensive and special teams game for sure.
Yeah, the field position will be everything in this game. And I have little confidence that either offense can string together like 3 or 4 touchdown drives in a row or anything crazy like that. I don't know if they can string together 3 or 4 field goal drives in a row.
We hope so, because we'll all be there watching. So it'd be nice to see a little bit of scoring, right?
Wake, you go back to Clausen's first 2 seasons. They won that one game 6-3 with Frank Beamer celebrating when it was 0-0 and going to overtime. And then even Clausen's, I think it was his second year, they won a game at Boston College 3-0. So it's a little bit of the same thing. The one thing with Wake special teams, they have not had a good punter all year. They brought in 2 punters from Australia, and the one that they had kind of touted and we all kind of assumed was going to be their guy has not punted once, and he showed up on the injury report early in the season, and he's been listed as out every game. So they're already on kind of plan B at punter, and I think they'd rather have him kick the ball 37 yards and have a fair catch than have him actually try to punt the ball. That's when they run into problems of out kicking or getting it off the side of his foot.
It's plan B from Australia as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, our 2 Australian punters going at it, boys. Our punters from Australia as well. So
that's not the first time this year that's happened, I don't think, for Carolina.
Yeah, that's a funny matchup. Well, hey man, I wanted to, before we let you go, Connor, not to put you on the spot or anything, but give us a prediction, I guess a score prediction to this game.
Oh.
Have you thought about it yet?
I'll predict some points so that you guys aren't like sitting there scratching your eyeballs out with a 7-3 game or anything like that. I'll say Wake wins 17-13.
Oh,
I'm telling you, I'm with you. I think it's that ugly of a football game. I do.
Hey, if you guys get 3 combined touchdowns, I think you should probably be happy with that.
Now on the flip side, I do think it'll be a defensive game. But if one offense can get heated up, Trev, you've talked about it. Get right games here recently.
Gio played good in the second half last week, boys.
Exactly. Carolina for the way they've started the first half, the last 2 games, we can't sit here and say that they haven't made adjustments at halftime and they've looked like a different team offensively. So I do think if both offenses or whichever offense can get going, I think that could be a critical turning point in the game too. While I do think it'll be a defensive football game, it'll be interesting to see which offense as a whole, coaching staff and all 11 on the field see if they can be a factor in it as well.
I love how we're still shooting for get right games with 4 games left in the season.
But that was 3 games ago when I brought that up. But we did have a game that game, so we'll see.
When I think Wake is kind of taking the approach too that Carolina is. Like they feel confident in their defense and some of the and I know they just came off a game against Virginia where Virginia offensively is a far better unit offensively than Carolina is. But I mean, even Virginia offensively struggled coming into Keenan Stadium. They haven't rushed. They haven't ran the ball as well or successfully as they had earlier on in the season. So, I don't know, man. It'll be interesting to see. I think both teams kind of take the mindset that they're confident enough in their defense where their offense doesn't necessarily have to put up 45 points. You can kind of. And one thing that I will say about Carolina, and will be interesting to see if whichever offense can get started fast. You know what I mean? First,
we're 4-0 when we score 20 plus. So if we can get to 20, who knows?
Yep. We'll see, man. Connor, I appreciate you jumping on with us tonight, brother. It was fun to pick your brain about all things Wake Forest. Maybe we'll be able to pick your brain about Duke next week. We'll see.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks for tuning in to the Tar Pit podcast tonight. I'm not going to do the full read for the 15% off code. You know the deal. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. But I do want to mention 2 things. Join us tomorrow night for the playbook from the Tar Pit. We'll be back on tomorrow night at 8:30 with former UNC wide receiver J.J. Jones. That's our episode to kind of give you what we think, other than score more points that Carolina needs to do to win the ball game. I feel very confident, sounds like, right? So, but be sure to be back on with us tomorrow night at 8:30 with former UNC wide receiver J.J. Jones for the playbook from the Tar Pit. It's going to be a good time. Also, be glued to all social channels tomorrow for the Tar Pit from the Tar Pit podcast, as we will be releasing how you can win 2 free tickets and a $50 gift card from our friends over at Tailgate and Shrunken Head to the Duke game. So you'll be able to buy some fresh new game day gear and
some buttons. Some custom-made buttons.
Yep. They got the custom-made buttons now and 2 free tickets to the Duke game, which is not this weekend, but next weekend. And we'll also be releasing our time for the game day live show that we do for every home game once we know the score. So thanks for tuning into the Tar Pit podcast. Again, Connor, appreciate you tuning in with us tonight. We definitely had a good time dropping all the knowledge on Wake Forest. It was definitely an interesting time that we had to be able to talk about 2 teams, one 6-3 and one trying to still find its way. Got to win 2 out of the next 3 to make it to a bowl game. So thanks for everybody tuning into the Tar Pit podcast. Until next time, go Heels.
Go Heels.
Go Heels.
Hey Tar Pit crew, thanks for hanging with us today. Quick shout out. Today's episode is powered by Untapped Sports Network. Big thanks to them for the support. If you like this episode, do us a favor. Like it, drop a comment, and share it with a friend. That kind of support goes a long way in keeping the podcast rolling. Make sure you're subscribed and following the Tar Pit podcast on whatever platform you're listening on right now. And don't forget to follow us on social. We're on X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search the Tar Pit podcast and you'll find us. Until next time, go Heels.